Could you imagine if the whole state of Arkansas and Oklahoma were completely wiped out? According to the 2019 Census Bureau, that's about 6 million people. That's about as many people that died in the Holocaust in the Nazi camps between the years of 1933 and 1945. Over 1.5 million of those were children. The Holocaust is the largest genocide to ever happen in our world's history. It is important to properly inform people and to learn about such important events in our history. From movies, articles, and books, the Holocaust is still known as one of the largest mass murders to ever take place in the history of the world. The history of the Holocaust has always fascinated me, ever since learning about it in middle school. Starting off in 5th grade, I just thought that it was just crazy that something like this happened. I've watched many documentaries, read countless articles about the Holocaust, including leading up to the Holocaust, during the Holocaust, and after liberation started. Today I'm going to discuss events that led up to the Holocaust, and then I will discuss the different types of camps that took place inside, or the different camps and what took place inside of the camps. Finally, I will discuss the liberation and what took place during that. It started in 1944. From movies and articles, it is the Holocaust is still known as one of the largest mass murders in our world's history. Adolf Hitler was the Chancellor of Germany from 1933 to 1945, when, according to his to History.com editors, he committed suicide in his bunker in Berlin. Hitler served in the Great War, and he received multiple medals for bravery. By 1921, Hitler had he was now leading the Nazi Party, and he had part of Hitler's propaganda idea was to adopt the ancient symbol of Hakenkreuz, what we know today as the swastika, which I am holding in my hands right now. They stitched the swastika on in a white circle with a red background, and a lot of times they wore them as like an arm cuff. The symbol is actually still widely known and associated with the Nazi Party and the Holocaust to this day. In the early years of Hitler's rise to power, he took many small steps in order to get to the Holocaust and to the magnitude that it reached. According to Professor Doris Bergen, in an interview she did with Facing History, the separation soon began after Hitler took power. Germans were isolated, sent to ghettos, and they were just living in very harsh conditions, sterilized and eventually even killed. Professor Bergen goes on to tell us, between the years of 1939 and 1941 is when the Nazi Party really took to violence. That's when they started spreading out out of Germany, through Poland, France, and the Western Europe. This is when they started killing more than just Jews. They started going to elders, people with disabilities. That's when they started doing testing on the twins. Now that we've discussed Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party, I'm going to tell you about different types of camps and what was happening inside of these camps. They were all approved by Hitler and the Nazi Party. Dachau was the first concentration camp to exist. He actually opened it about a month after he became Chancellor of Germany. It became the model and training center for all of the other concentration camps. They did training there for the Nazi soldiers, and that's where they shot their propaganda videos and so forth. About 32,000 people died at this first initial camp. The Nazi Party opened 5 different kinds of camps. The first camp was known and referred to as a concentration camp, which most of us are familiar with. These inmates were held and exploited for their labors. Then we had extermination camps, which were for the sole purpose to kill and wipe out all races deemed degenerate by the Nazi Party and Hitler. Then we had transit camps, were kind of like a stop between going from a ghetto to a different concentration camp. This is a place where they held people before they transported them. Forced labor camps were used to force prisoners to make things for other camps, for military personnel, stuff like that. The last type of Nazi camp that we have is the prisoner of war camp. At these camps, you had Allied military personnel, American soldiers, Polish, pretty much anybody that came from war that were not German. They had Soviet military personnel, and it was also very harsh living conditions. Just because they weren't all Jews, it was still very bad there. The United States Holocaust Memorial Museum shows that more than 44,000 camps and incarceration sites were built in between the year of 1933 and 1945. Ghettos were a place that they used to separate Jews from the regular population. Research shows that there was 3 different types of ghettos that existed. We had a closed ghetto, which was completely fenced, had walls, and then we had an open ghetto, which had no fences and no walls, but it was still very isolated and had strict rules about people who were to come and leave and what could happen there. Just because it didn't have walls or fences, it was still very harsh living conditions. Then we have the destruction ghettos, which were very tightly conformed and tightly sealed away from everything else. They didn't exist long, and Jews were either sent there just to be deported somewhere else, or they were completely killed. This is a picture of a ghetto market that is inside of one of the ghettos in Germany, and it shows just like how tight and how many people were there and how small the confined spaces were. So now that we've discussed what events led to the Holocaust, what happened at the camps and the different ghettos and different camps that we talked about, now I will discuss the liberation, which was when Jews and anybody in concentration camps were starting to be set free. Majdanek was located in Poland, and it was the first camp to ever be liberated. A lot of the times they would tear down these concentration camps before the soldiers could get there, and so there wasn't a lot of evidence of what was happening there. But this concentration camp was left intact and had a lot of evidence of mass murders and terrible things that the Nazis have done. Bergen-Belsen concentration camp was liberated in 1945. U.S. HMM wrote that some of 60,000 prisoners, most critical conditions, were actually found alive there, but unfortunately about a fourth of them passed away only within weeks of being liberated. Stuffold was the last camp to be liberated in 1945, and not only was it the last camp, but it was also the first camp to ever be built outside of German lines. And about 65,000 people died in that camp before liberation could even begin. Now that we've discussed Adolf Hitler and what steps were taken leading up to the Holocaust, we also discussed the types of camps and ghettos that were built and used by the Nazi Party and Hitler. And then we discussed the liberation of many people from the Nazi camps between the years of 1944 and to 1945. So from movies, articles, and books, the Holocaust is still known as one of the largest mass murders in our world's history, and it is very important to know the significant part of our world's history, and that should never be forgotten. The Holocaust was a horrific genocide that lasted for years. Okay, and these are my 3